This is the recording of my second learner who is in grade 5.
Moment at rest 1. It was 10 in the morning at Mabuhay Elementary School. It's time to take a snack. If was rest time, pupils are lined up in waiting for their turns to go inside. The sentence out the crow Soles seems down at the beach, just looking around. The kids eating and some are playing. He had no money and to buy something because his father did not refuse his salary. Yet his mother told him to him is breakfast for him to be full until lunchtime. While waiting for the time to pass by, he suddenly was 50 pesos of the crowd. He said to himself, if I spend this money, I will be able to have lots to eat for rest. But he notes that it is not the right thing to do. So he goes to the classroom and asks for help from his advisor to feed the governor of the money. It so happened that one of his classmates in Ren was crying at the corner of the classroom because she lost her mother. So Lelito has Irene who much he lot is 50 pesos side Allen. Joselito give his 50 pesos that he should off to eat inside. I think is this your errand was too thankful to Jose as a from on happening of told Joselito to go to the canteen with her and their share snacks for Joselito was grateful to that because of this handies we has available to enjoy his rest time. Moment at rest.
The learner omitted 1. The learner said rest instead of recess. The learner also omitted the name of the author by Grace S. Ponce.
1. It was 10 in the morning.
The learner inserted 1 before the first word in the text.
At Mabuhay Elementary School, it's time to take a snack. If was rest time,
The learner substituted it with if. The learner said rest instead of recess for the second time.
pupils are lined up
The learner mispronounced pupils as pupils. The learner read R twice.
in waiting for their turns to go inside. The sentence
The learner mispronounced canteen as sentence.
out the crow
The learner omitted of. The learner mispronounced crowd as crow.
Soles seems down at the beach.
The learner said Soles instead of Joselito. The learner substituted bench with beach.
Just looking around, the kids eating and some are playing.
The learner said play instead of playing.
He had no money and to buy something
The learner inserted and between money and to.
because his father did not refuse his salary. Yet
The learner mispronounced his as is. The learner mispronounced receive as profess, and the learner read the first sound in yet twice.
His mother told him, "To him is breakfast for him."
The learner substituted have with him. The learner also substituted a with is. The learner omitted the word heavy.
To be full until lunchtime.
The learner initially mispronounced full as fa and eventually pronounced it correctly on the second attempt. The learner mispronounced lunch as lance.
While waiting for the time to pass by,
The learner said will instead of while.
he suddenly was 50 pesos off the crowd.
The learner mispronounced suddenly as suddenly. The learner substituted saw with was. The learner mispronounced 50 as 50. The learner repeated the middle syllable in pesos. The learner substituted on with off. The learner mispronounced ground as ground.
He said to himself,
The learner mispronounced said as side.
"If I spend this money, I will be able."
The learner substituted I with a. The learner mispronounced spend as speed. The learner also mispronounced able as able.
To have lots to eat for rest.
The learner mispronounced lots as lots. The learner said res instead of recess for the third time.
But he notes that it is not the right thing to do.
The learner mispronounced nose as nuts.
So he goes to the classroom and asks for help from his advisor.
The learner mispronounced asks as axe.
To feed the governor of the money.
The learner initially substituted to with if and corrected it successfully on the second attempt. The learner substituted find with feed. The learner mispronounced owner as overner, and the learner substituted that with the.
It so happened that one of his classmates in Ren.
The learner said happen instead of happens. The learner substituted his with he. The learner did not pronounce the s sound at the end of the word classmates, and the learner mispronounced Irene as Inren.
Was crying at the corner of the classroom because she lost her mother.
The learner substituted money with mothers.
So Lelito has Irene who much he lot.
The learner mispronounced Joselito as Solelito. The learner substituted asks with has. The learner mispronounced Irene for the second time. This time, the learner said Irene. The learner initially mispronounced how as ho, followed by who. The learner substituted she with he. And the learner initially mispronounced lost as lo, followed by lot. Both are unsuccessful attempts to pronounce lost.
Is 50 pesos side early.
The learner said is instead of its. The learner mispronounced 50 as 50 for the second time. The learner also mispronounced said as side for the second time. The learner mispronounced Irene for the third time. This time I heard iron.
Joselito give his 50 pesos that he should.
The learner omitted the s sound in gives. The learner substituted the with his. The learner mispronounced 50 as 50 for the third time. The learner mispronounced so as su.
Of to eat inside, I think is this year.
The learner initially substituted to with of and eventually corrected it on the second attempt. The learner mispronounced Irene for the fourth time. This time, she said E. The learner mispronounced said aside for the third time. The learner said is instead of its for the second time. The learner inserted this between its and yours, and the learner said your instead of yours.
Parent was too thankful to Jose as
The learner mispronounced Irene for the fifth time. This time, the learner said a rent. The learner substituted so with to. The learner said Jose instead of Joselito.
a from on happening.
The learner substituted form with from. The learner substituted of with on. The learner also substituted her with happening and omitted the word appreciation.
Of told Joselito to go to the canteen with her
The learner substituted she with of.
and their share snacks for restaurant.
The learner substituted they with their. The learner mispronounced shared as share. The learner said rese instead of recess.
Joselito was grateful
The learner mispronounced grateful as grateful.
do that because of this aunties.
The learner mispronounced that as though. The learner substituted his with this, and the learner mispronounced honesty as hantis.
We has available to enjoy his rest time.
The learner substituted he with we. The learner also substituted was with has. The learner substituted able with available, and the learner said res instead of recess for the fourth time.